The word Welsh was not chosen by the Welsh. It is an Old English word, and it means roughly foreigner or stranger. Picture that for a second. The English looked at a people who had already lived on this island for thousands of years before them and named them the outsiders. The Welsh word for themselves is something completely different, Cymru, meaning fellow countrymen. That single clash of names tells you almost everything about the story we are about to walk through. I'm Edward, and with deep research and AI-built visuals, I'm going to take you through the whole of it. The history of one of the oldest, most stubborn, and most quietly extraordinary nations in Europe. Start long before there is anything called Wales, or England, or even Britain. In a quiet field in Pembrokeshire stands a structure called Pentre Ifan, a vast capstone, around 16 tons of rock, balanced on tall, thin standing stones. It is a tomb, and it is roughly 5,500 years old. To put that in plain terms, it was already ancient when the pyramids of Egypt were brand new. People were farming, living, and burying their loved ones in this corner of the map 50 centuries ago, and they left behind standing stones, burial chambers, and gold scattered across these hills. By the Iron Age, the land is held by Celtic peoples, organized into tribes and guided in part by a priestly class we call the Druids. And the Druids bring us to the first time this land crashes, dramatically, into written history. In the year 60, a Roman army marches all the way to the northwestern tip of Wales, to the island of Anglesey, the great stronghold of the Druids. The Roman writer Tacitus describes the scene almost like an eyewitness. Robed Druids and wild figures lining the shore, and Roman soldiers genuinely hesitating in fear before they cross the water to attack. The Romans win. The Druid center is destroyed. It is, in a real sense, the first conquest of Wales, and it sets a pattern that will repeat for almost 2,000 years. A larger power arrives, and the people of these mountains refuse to make it easy. The Romans stayed for centuries. They built a major fortress at Caerleon, and they even worked gold mines at Dolaucothi. Yes, Wales had Roman gold mines, and you can still go down them today. But here is the deeper thing that happened while Rome was here. Christianity took root, and Latin learning took root. And when Rome finally collapsed and Anglo-Saxon settlers poured into eastern Britain, the people of the Western Mountains held on to all of it. They kept their ancient Celtic language. They kept their faith. They simply did not break. And those people, the Britons of the West, slowly became the Welsh. This is where one of the great quiet facts of European history sits. The Welsh language is one of the oldest living languages on the entire continent, older than English, with roots reaching straight back to the tongue spoken in Britain before the Romans ever set foot here. The earliest surviving poetry in any living British language is Welsh, verses by bards named Aneurin and Taliesin, composed around the year 600, mourning fallen warriors and praising kings. People were writing sophisticated poetry in Welsh, while much of Northern Europe was barely writing anything down at all. This is also the age of the saints. Around the 500s, a monk named Dewi, known to the English as St. David, preaches and founds monasteries across the southwest. His followers lived with severe discipline, only bread, herbs, and water, and famously they refused to use oxen to pull their ploughs, dragging them by hand instead, because they would not put their own labor onto another creature's back. David became the patron saint of Wales, and his feast day, the 1st of March, is still the Welsh National Day. I have always loved that detail about the oxen. It tells you what these people valued in a single line. By the 700s, the Welsh and the English are firmly two separate peoples, divided by a hard border. The English king Offa built an enormous earthwork, Offa's Dyke, to mark and defend that line, and the national walking trail that follows it today still runs for 177 miles. Think about that. The modern border between Wales and England still sits close to a line drawn by a king more than 1,200 years ago. Behind that border, Wales was rarely a single kingdom. It was a shifting patchwork, Gwynedd in the mountainous north, Powys in the centre, Deheubarth in the south, endlessly competing with one another. But one ruler stands out, Hywel the Good, who around the year 940 gathered scholars to write down a single unified code of Welsh law. And those laws are genuinely remarkable. Compared with most of medieval Europe, they gave women real rights, to own property, to leave a bad marriage, to a fair share of what a couple had built together. 1,000 years ago, on a Welsh hillside, the law was kinder to women than it would be in much of Europe for centuries to come. From this same medieval Welsh world comes the Mabinogion, a collection of dazzling, strange, hugely influential tales of giants, magic, and transformation. They feed straight into the legends of King Arthur, a figure whose deepest roots are tangled in Welsh tradition. And many centuries later, a young Oxford scholar named J.R.R. Tolkien fell in love with the Welsh language and its myths, and he happily admitted how much Welsh shaped the languages and the atmosphere of Middle-earth. Then, in 1066, the Normans conquer England and immediately turn their eyes west. They cannot easily take the Welsh mountains, so they do the next best thing. They build castles, hundreds of them. And this is the origin of a record Wales still holds today. Wales has more castles per square mile than any other country on Earth. Roughly 600 of them, in a country you can drive across in a couple of hours. For 2 centuries, Welsh princes hold the line against the Normans and the English crown. The greatest of them is Llywelyn the Great, who in the early 1200s pulled most of Wales together under his leadership through a mix of warfare, careful marriage, and sheer political skill. For a moment, an independent Wales looked genuinely solid. His grandson, Llywelyn the Last, inherited that dream and watched it collapse. The English king now was Edward I, one of the most relentless rulers in English history. Through the 1270s and into the 1280s, Edward ground the independent Welsh state down. In 1282, Llywelyn the Last was drawn into a skirmish near Kilmary and lost his life. With him, the last native-ruled Welsh state came to an end. There is a simple memorial stone at Kilmary today, and people still leave flowers there. 700 years later, it has not been forgotten. What Edward did next, he did to make the conquest permanent. He threw a ring of gigantic stone castles around the north of Wales, Conwy, Caernarfon, Harlech and Beaumaris. They are so vast and so advanced for their time that today they are protected together as a World Heritage Site, counted among the finest medieval castles anywhere in the world. Caernarfon was built deliberately to resemble an imperial palace, a permanent stone statement that Wales now had a master. And here is the story almost everyone half remembers. Edward needed a Prince of Wales, and the legend says he promised the Welsh a prince who was born in Wales and could speak no word of English, then presented them with his own newborn son, born inside Caernarfon Castle, who of course could not yet speak at all. Historians treat that tale with real caution, but the outcome is solid and unbroken. From that point on, the title Prince of Wales has been handed to the heir of the English and later British throne, right down to the present day. Quick question while we are mid-journey. Had you ever realized that the title Prince of Wales actually began as a symbol of conquest rather than of Wales itself? Drop a comment and tell me whether that one surprised you. The reactions to that fact are always worth reading. Wales did not simply accept it. In 1400, a nobleman named Owain Glyndwr rose in revolt, declared himself Prince of Wales, summoned a Welsh parliament, and dreamed of Welsh universities and an independent Welsh church. For more than a decade, he held large parts of the country. The rebellion eventually faded, but Glyndwr himself was never captured and never betrayed. He simply vanished from the record around 1415, and to this day, nobody knows where or how his story ended. He became and remains a national symbol. Then, in a remarkable twist, a man of Welsh descent took the throne of England itself. In 1485, Henry Tudor, grandson of a Welshman, landed in Pembrokeshire, marched east, and won the crown, becoming King Henry VII. The Tudor dynasty, the family of Henry VIII and Elizabeth I, carried Welsh blood and Welsh roots. For many Welsh people at the time, it felt like a kind of vindication. It did not quite work out that way. Henry VIII's government passed the Acts of Union in the 1530s and 40s, formally folding Wales into England's legal and administrative system. English became the only language of the law courts and of official life. Welsh, the language of the overwhelming majority of the population, was locked out of power, and that exclusion would shape the next 4 centuries. And yet the language survived, and the reason it survived can be traced to one man and one book. In 1588, a scholar named William Morgan completed a full translation of the Bible into Welsh. Because every parish church was legally required to keep a copy, this single book placed high-quality, standardized written Welsh into communities right across the country. Historians broadly agree. William Morgan's Bible is a major reason Welsh is still a living spoken language today, when so many other ancient European languages have simply vanished. One book, one translator, an entire language carried through. For most of its history, Wales had been rural, poor, and overlooked. Then, beneath its valleys, the modern world found exactly what it needed: iron and coal, and Wales was transformed almost beyond recognition. The town of Merthyr Tydfil in the south became for a time the iron-making capital of the world. Its ironworks supplied railways, machinery, and weapons across the globe. Then came coal, and the South Wales valleys became one of the most intensely industrial regions on the planet. Hundreds of thousands of people poured in to dig it. By 1913, the port of Cardiff was exporting more coal than any other port on Earth, and the world's first cheque for £1 million was reportedly signed at Cardiff's coal exchange. Welsh steam coal powered navies and ocean liners across the entire world. In the north, the story was Slate. The enormous quarries of Gwynedd, places like Penrhyn, produced slate that was shipped everywhere, roofing cities from Europe to the Americas. There is a genuine, quiet truth in the old saying that Wales roofed the world. Stand under an old slate roof almost anywhere in the Western world, and there is a fair chance you are standing under a piece of a Welsh mountain. But this boom was built on punishing, dangerous work, and Wales paid a heavy price for it. The mines took a steady and terrible toll, and the workers fought back. In 1910 and 1911, miners in Tonypandy went on strike. There were tense confrontations with police and troops, and the events became a landmark in British Labour history. Out of those valleys, Wales became one of the most powerfully working-class, trade union and politically radical parts of Britain. The Welshman David Lloyd George rose to become Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and laid early foundations of the welfare state. And decades later, it was another Welshman, Aneurin Bevan, a miner's son from the valley's town of Tredegar, who created the National Health Service. The next time someone in Britain is treated free of charge by the NHS, they are, in a sense, benefiting from the son of a Welsh coal miner. Industrial Wales was also, increasingly, a place pressured to abandon its own language. In 1847, a notorious government report, remembered in Welsh as the treachery of the Blue Books, blamed the Welsh language itself for ignorance and immorality. In schools, children caught speaking Welsh could be forced to wear a wooden sign called the Welsh Knot, and were punished for it. It is exactly the kind of thing that makes a people grip harder to what is being pulled away from them. And some did something extraordinary in response. In 1865, a group of Welsh people, determined to protect their language and their way of life, sailed all the way to Patagonia in southern Argentina and founded a Welsh colony there called Llywelyn. And here is the part that genuinely amazes me. It is still there. In a corner of Argentina, on the far side of the planet, there are towns where people still speak Welsh, still keep Welsh chapels and tea rooms, and still hold Welsh cultural festivals, more than a century and a half later. The 20th century brought Wales both world wars and one event so painful it changed the country permanently. On the 21st of October 1966, above the mining village of Aberfan, a vast tip of coal waste, soaked by weeks of rain, slid down the mountainside and engulfed a school. 144 people lost their lives, and 116 of them were children. It is impossible to speak of it lightly, and Wales has never forgotten it. The disaster forced both Wales and Britain to confront, head-on, what the coal economy had been quietly costing ordinary families all along. And yet, through all of this, the language and the sense of nationhood did not fade away. They were deliberately, stubbornly revived. In 1962, a radio broadcast by the writer Saunders Lewis warned that Welsh would not survive without action, and it lit a movement. Campaigners pushed, sometimes by deliberately breaking the law, for Welsh road signs, Welsh medium schools, and a Welsh language television channel, which finally arrived in 1982. In 2011, the Welsh language was granted full official status in Wales. The number of Welsh speakers, after centuries of decline, has been climbing again. And in 1997, the people of Wales voted, very narrowly indeed, for a parliament of their own. In 1999 it opened, and today it is called the Senedd. For the first time since Llywelyn the Last lost his life back in 1282, Wales has a national lawmaking body of its own. So what is Wales today? It is a nation of roughly 3 million people, and, famously, a great many more sheep, which outnumber the people several times over. It has handed the world a startling amount of culture for its size. The actors Richard Burton and Anthony Hopkins, the singers Tom Jones and Shirley Bassey, and, a fact people rarely know, the writer Roald Dahl, who was born in Cardiff to Norwegian parents. It has a village on the island of Anglesey, with a name so long it became famous in its own right. Llanfair pul Gwyn-gil Gogerich Wirndrobf, Lantysilio Gogogok. And here is the cheeky part. That gloriously long name was partly invented in the 1860s as a deliberate publicity stunt to give the village the longest railway station sign in Britain. And it has rugby and male voice choirs and a national anthem, Hen Vlad Fi Nadau, Land of My Fathers, sung by tens of thousands of voices in a way that genuinely lifts the hair on your arms. So step back and look at the whole shape of this, a people the conquerors literally named the foreigners in their own homeland. Conquered by Rome, hemmed in by a Dyke, broken in 1282, absorbed by an act of union, pressured for centuries to give up their own tongue, and still here. Still speaking one of the oldest languages in Europe. Still singing. And after 700 years, with their own parliament once again. So tell me, down in the comments, what genuinely surprised you? That Welsh means foreigner? The Welsh speakers still living in Argentina? The miner's son who built a nation's health service? I read every reply, and they shape what I make next. And tell me which country, which people, which corner of the map you would like me to take you through after this one. I'm Edward. The work coming next on this channel is going to be sharper and deeper than anything I have made so far. So if you would like to be there for it, you already know where the subscribe button is waiting. Wales spent 2,000 years being told it was the stranger in its own land. It is still standing, still singing, and still, unmistakably, home. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out the video recommended by YouTube on the left side of the screen.